Everyone, welcome. This is episode 284 of Milwaukee's Tailgate Brewers podcast, part of the MKE Tailgate Network. I'm James, joined once again by Ryan and Paul. We're doing this a day later than normal because of Mother's Day festivities. And as such, we're recording this as the Brewers are just getting their heads kicked in by the Cardinals. And Ryan is very upset about literally everything that's happened tonight.
Oh, this is the worst. This is like the perfectly engineered game to make me angry. It's so awful in every conceivable respect. Everything about it is just dreadful, and I hate it. I completely hate it.
You know, I can say this on Monday night, it's just one of 162.
There you go.
So we'll pack that one away. And then by the time
good.
you listen to this, there's probably going to be another irritating game on Tuesday night too, because that's the way trips to St. Louis go. But we'll talk about the Cardinals a little bit coming up. We have a ton of questions to get to. I think like over 24. That's easily a record.
Incredible.
Thank you. So, yeah, thank you
Well
for all
done.
those Patreon questions. And speaking of those Patreon questions, you can become a patron over at patreon.com/MKE Tailgate. $2 a month gets you question priority, guarantees your question gets answered both on this podcast and on reporting as eligible if you have Packers questions there. $5 a month gets you that question priority plus additional exclusive content, including the minor league extra with Ryan and James Anderson from RotoWire, as well as Paul's reporting as eligible mini pods. So we'll just keep the chit chat kind of minimal here because we have so much to get to. A lot of questions from all of you. Again, thank you so much. And that Patreon level is how you guarantee your question here on the episode. So it'll be an all Patreon show this week, and some themes popping up, but let's, I guess, just start with the big picture. So we'll start with a question from My Only Lemonade, because Ryan was asking for happy questions after a walk-off on Saturday. So My Only Lemonade says, happy questions. Number one, we're about to hit the quarter point of the season, and the Brewers are on pace to win 91 games. Who's your MVP so far? And then question number two, zooming out to overall team strength, the Brewers will win 91 games because of their blank. So, Ryan, let's just start with you. Who's MVP so far? And if they do win 91 games, how is it going to happen?
So I got to go with Contreras. I was just looking at this, and he has jumped into a pretty reasonable, substantial lead here on Baseball Reference in terms of WAR. Yelich is actually now up over 1 as well after his great weekend. So that's, like those would be the two guys you could kind of point to, because Freddie had a bad night tonight, and I don't think has had the bulk innings really that you need as a starter to be really, really impactful that way. So for me, it's Contreras, and the Brewers are going to end up where they're at here because of their depth. Like, they're going to end up having a better season, I think, than people expect, especially with all these injuries. Like, I keep waiting for it to collapse. And it's the depth that is keeping them alive and getting them through this. And so I think that more than anything is, and it's, this is nothing new. We've talked about this for years and years and years. This is how they build the team, is through depth. So, yep, that's what they're doing.
Yep. Hipster me would go with Wade Miley because I think they would maybe be toast without him. But I do think William Contreras is the correct answer. He is 18% better than average on offense. He's been a good defensive catcher to boot. He provides them with like actual good hitting. He gets on base. He has 370 OBP. That's probably enough, honestly. All that other stuff doesn't matter as much as that. But Ryan's depth answer is good too, and I would support that. There are 4 regulars in the starting lineup with OPS pluses over 100, and there are 4 backups with OPS pluses over 100. One of them's Garrett Mitchell. So, but Victor Caratini, Mike Brasso, and Owen Miller are all above 110, and that helps. So, but I agree. William Contreras is it. Like, gets on base, plays good catcher defense. You can't ask for anything more. They sorely need it. Oh, and if they make the playoffs, depth's my answer, really. My other answer is Yelich returning to awesomeness, but we'll get to that later.
Speaking of that, tons of Christian Yelich questions, understandably, after the weekend that he had. Just pulled an absolute bomb on Sunday. That one verified pulled. the one off the scoreboard. I guess maybe we can have a debate about. I know Ryan ran a Twitter poll on that one. So
I think we call it a half pull, but I think he did pull it. I think. Oh shoot! I have his Savant page open, and I accidentally clicked on that home run, which of course brought it up and played the sound. So
we didn't hear it, so you're all good, Paul.
Good. I feel like he turned that one around enough that it's pulled, even though it is kind of a center field home run. I feel like the center field home run, the true center field home run, kind of like flies it's a certain way, like just really straight up off the bat. And this one looked like he got around on it, so I think it counts.
I'll count it too. So entering the Christian Yelich phase of this episode, let's start with Archduke Aslatam or Darth Paul. I can't decide. Who is asking, should the Brewers hire Yelich's mom to have her in the stands for all games? She was there on Mother's Day. Turned out to be a really good game for him, Paul. So Yelich's mom in the stands full time?
Yeah, totally. Like a natural kind of thing, just have her stand up at opportune moments. And yeah, I think that it's a good idea. It can't hurt, right? So I'm on board with it. Whatever works for that guy. I mean, I think it's psychological. So yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, so she was there at Saturday and Sunday's games? Were they showing her during both?
I only saw her on the Sunday games, but I can't say for sure on Saturday.
Oh, okay.
Kind of in and out on that one.
Yeah, so I was at the game on Sunday and was at a concert on Saturday night. So I didn't watch either of those on TV, so I missed like the Brian Anderson return experience. So, and now right away, he's gone again. Like just as soon as he came, he's now just disappeared again.
So, yeah, I guess speaking of Yelly in psychology, our next question comes from Corey Diedrich asking, did Paul secretly have batting practice with Yelich and wasn't able to tell anyone? While the rest of the media will ask if Yelich is back, we all know he was working with Paul. And then a reply from Eric Romblom. This is how many questions we had this week. You guys were replying to each other in the comments.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of wild. Eric asking, I second this inquiry. Yelly just turned on an off-speed pitch middle in, 3 home runs in 2 days, 7 overall, and they aren't all cheap opposite field wall scrapers. If Yelly can put together multiple short stretches of quote-unquote old MVP Yelich, I think we all understand that 2018 Yelich will not return for a full season. What kind of impact does that have for the offense going forward and the overall win projections? So first of all, Paul, have you been working with Yelly on the side there? And B, if we can get these short bursts, that's a good thing, right?
So it is a good thing, obviously, yes. And there are some signs of some actual changes that we can talk about. One of the funny things is if I ever actually got to do that, there's no way the team would actually let me tell anybody that I did it because it would be an indictment of their own coaching staff, and it would, it would be a cockamamie thing that would make them look silly. So there is no way for me to answer this question because there's no way for you to trust the answer I give. So that's my answer. But last year, he pulled 1 home run down the line all year. He had a couple he had 4, I think, in the power alleys. They were definitely just him missing, and missing, quote unquote, and getting out in front of a couple and crushing them. But he's got 2 down the line. He pulled that other one. Like he looks like he's actually taking better swings. Archon, my football cohort, ran a couple stats this morning that in May at least his elevation's way up to like 2018, 2019 levels. And he's currently on pace for 26 home runs and also 35 stolen bases, but that doesn't matter this year because this year is stupid. But 26 home runs is pretty good. And that's a lot of that's based off of the last month. So he looks like he's actually approaching hitting better. Inside pitches are not being driven the other way. He's actually turning on it. His pull percentage isn't actually higher. He's just elevating what he pulls. And that is like half the battle here. So if he keeps doing that, even if he is, depressed a little bit, he's never lost hard hit percentage. He's always punished the ball through all of this downtime. He's just been a ground ball monster. Just get it up in the air. It's going to fly out. And yeah, he turns into a huge weapon if that happens, especially because apparently nobody can play defense in left field in the league. And also he is now throwing the ball 95 miles an hour. So like just good stuff all around from Yelich. Lots of signs of improvement.
Yeah, and Kurt Hogue actually had that a couple days ago. He was talking about the May launch angle, and we do have a question coming up about that. But yeah, Kurt also mentioned that. So yeah, this really is sort of an all-around thing. And I'm going to take the other part of his question here because I think you hit the sort of what we need to look for, and we still need to be very cautious about this because we have all jumped the gun on this before.
It's like a week.
Yeah, it's a week. It doesn't matter yet. So
yeah,
you need another month and a half at least here.
Yeah, we've all jumped the gun before on this. So, but I will say that like Christian Yelich getting to be some sort of approximation of MVP Christian Yelich is the number one thing this team is missing, and it's going to be the hardest thing for them to get. Right? This is the hardest thing to do, is to get an MVP anchor bat for the middle of your lineup. Somebody who's going to put up really, really good numbers. And so if you have it, it makes everything else sort of function smoother and kind of click into place better. And so like when he gets into like how big would that be for the Brewers? Absolutely massive. I think it transforms kind of how the offense functions from top to bottom just by having that big bat in the middle that is sort of, especially a guy like Yelich who gets on base a ton and also slugs when he's going well, being able to do both of those things in the middle of your lineup, both affects the guys in front of him in terms of being able to drive them in, and affects the guys in back of him in terms of him being on for him to be driven in, right? So it's sort of the perfect thing. I don't think we're anywhere near being able to say that that's happening, but you asked the question, so I'm going to say that would be absolutely massive.
Yeah.
All right, next Yelich question comes from Adam Post asking, do non-pulled home runs from Christian Yelich even count?
No.
On a more serious note, is his improved launch angle average this month a good sign or an aberration? So we kind of referenced this too. Paul, what do you think?
I think it's legitimately a good sign, small sample size notwithstanding, just because it's been consistent for at least a little while. And I feel like it's actually kind of hard for Yelich to luck into this much elevation. Like his, I messed up StatCast earlier, as you all know, but his launch angle for the year is up to 5.7, which isn't great. But last year was 3.6. In 2021, it was 2.8.
Yeah,
and it was like in that realm like 3 weeks ago. He has really been elevating it a lot lately, and like his swing when it's not going well will luck into hitting it on the ground more than anything else. Like it's just built. It was built for that. So I think we can be cautiously optimistic here that it shows that there is effort from him to get the ball in the air. It's unlikely that he's just lucking into a whole bunch of launch angle increase, and it's likely he's trying. So that's good. That's a really, really good sign. It might not hold out. Pitchers might figure out and adjust back, but I think there's reason to be optimistic here. This is looking a lot better.
Yeah, from Kurt's tweet, and this is on Saturday night, so this is before the Sunday pulled home run. Before he did that, his launch angle for the month was up to 9.9 degrees. So you have to figure it's probably, or at least was, I don't know what exactly he's done tonight in terms of air outs and ground outs, but he's around 10 at this point for the month. So that is going to bear watching. But we did this last year. I'm not sure exactly. And it feels like it was about this time of year where we had a thing where we're like, oh, the launch angle's going up. And so we have gotten excited prematurely about this before.
Oh, yeah.
So we have to be careful. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if he's going to get better, it has to start someplace. And this is a place to start. So fingers crossed that this is it. But, we've seen enough problems over the last few years that, like, we have to be somewhat skeptical of his ability to hold this. The biggest thing is, when he pulled that home run on Sunday, I was way more excited than I would have been if that was like, to dead center field.
Heck yeah.
Yes, like it would have, and hit a lot harder and further. I was more excited to see it pulled. And I mentioned this on Twitter this morning, Paul. You said something about this, and I responded, it's not, I want to make sure that we're clear about this. it's not that we're mad at Yelich for hitting balls the other way. Being an
Right.
all fields hitter is a good thing.
Yeah, but you have to actually be able to hit to all fields to do it.
Including the pull side. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he's leaving out the easy part and doing the hard part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's having opposite field power is the hard part. That's what, sort of separates like great hitters from good hitters, is when they have the ability to hit the ball hard to all fields.
Yes.
But Yelich is not doing the easy part, which is, elevating and celebrating when pulling the ball. Like that's supposed to be the easy part.
It's why my theory is right. He has all the tools to pull the ball reliably all the time. He hits the ball hard. He gets around on the ball quickly. It's just weird that this has been a problem.
Yeah, it truly is just one of the more confounding things. His career arc, and we've said this so many times, but like his career arc is just so damn weird. It's so
bizarre.
strange.
Yeah.
I guess speaking of so damn weird and strange, Christian Yelich, good outfielder now too. You guys mentioned that. I saw Archon's tweet that you were referencing, Paul, where he was saying everybody's talking about the launch angle, and his eye was drawn to the arm strength kind of being average now, which is kind of crazy to think about when you think of the years of bad throws from left field. But Mark Potscarby has a question here saying, currently, Yelich is number 1 in defensive runs saved for all left fielders in Major League Baseball. How sustainable is his defense? So I guess we talked about how sustainable is that launch angle, but can he keep that up in left field too?
So here's the funny thing about
after
this.
you, Ryan. After you.
Well, I'm looking at his StatCast page, and this is absolutely hilarious. So the outs above average, 92nd percentile.
Yeah.
His outfielder jump, 18th percentile.
Yep.
Oh.
Which before the season started, Jonathan mentioned that there are 2 factors that go into this, and Yelich is good at one of them: speed, not the other one, jump. So that one checks out, that he does not get good jumps off the ball.
Yeah, I mean, his arm strength is now up to 44th percentile, and it had to have been lower than that. There are things guys can do. Mike Trout had that, because Mike Trout was not a 5-tool player, and people were like, yeah, he doesn't have that good an arm. And so what did he do? Like, he spent an offseason like making his arm as good as he could, and he went from having like a below average arm to like a solid average arm. And so there are things you can do when you decide to focus on something, though. Apparently he just like didn't, I don't know what he did this winter, because he said he like got away from baseball, but it's not like he showed up like out of shape. He still looks like, the Roman statue Christian Yelich that like he has been since he got here. So like there's no difference there. It's just, so who knows, but apparently he did improve his arm.
My crazy theory being that he actually went into the cage for some actual like diagnostic hitting training, and while he was amenable to it, they stuck him in driveline training for 2 weeks. And like, we're really good at adding like 7 miles an hour to people's throwing. It's not that hard. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that actually happened. That's my working theory on that. By the way, Spencer Michaelis was talking with Mike Petriello this morning, and found Yelich's 95-mile-per-hour throw, and I just retweeted it on Twitter right now. If you want to go see what it was, doesn't look 95 to me, but it doesn't look slow. Looks good. I'd say like 90, 88. Cut off by whoever our third baseman was at the time.
Nice. I was gonna say it probably doesn't look like that laser from, was it Brian Anderson in right field, or any of Joey Weimer's throws. Those look like they could be like 95. Yeah. But Christian Yelich, again, just like everything he does looks awkward because he's this gangly looking dude, right? Mm-hmm. So he just doesn't make anything look smooth, but still blows my mind, and hell, I'm going to take it. All right. Yet another Christian Yelich question. Alex Foles asking, I saw a post on Reddit that based on Yelich's projected WAR, his contract this year will be a better deal than the typical free agent. Does he keep this up, and will this sway any of his detractors? So, of course, this year in line for about $26 million in base salary. So I guess if you got this kind of production from a guy for $26 million, Paul, like WAR-wise, that seems about right.
It does. It's hard to. he's such a yes, it's worth it. He's very weird. It's so dumb that he gets so much value from left field defense, but if he keeps hitting like this, yeah, it's not even close. Absolutely 100% worth it at that point. Like, he's on pace to be like a 4.5 win player this year, which is well worth it for that money. So yeah, I don't know if he keeps it up, but like his floor is kind of high because he's good at defense, which is stupid. But who knows? He'll probably be like a 3-win player. So yes, it's worth it. It's really strange.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Yelich is the problem was never like what his current production was, because even last year he was still like pretty close to basically earning his money on a dollar per WAR basis. It was the fear of going forward. You've got 7 more years left on the contract. And what is that going to look like when he's already like showing these signs of decline and showing these signs that like he's not the player he was at the time the deal was signed? So it's more about worrying about the projection going forward than it is in the present tense. But yeah, the dollars per WAR thing is tricky because it's you're comparing a lot of apples, oranges, kumquats, and like tractors at one point here, because these guys are all at different points in their career, and a guy making, like in pre-arbitration who's a 6-win player and he's making 700,000, that's going to throw off the calculation, right? So how much a player is actually worth, like what the dollar per WAR in free agency is, and it also gets complicated about how long deals are and all of these other factors. So dollars per WAR is like a bad metric to use in general for trying to figure out like what the return on investment is, just because it doesn't have the true, like it lacks context basically. But yeah, it's a weird situation. It's still, I mean, I think if you gave the Brewers the chance to tear that contract up today, they would do it, right?
Yeah, they would.
So, I mean, at this point, and I don't know how much he could do this year besides like becoming MVP Christian Yelich again. Like, if they gave, continue to give them chances to rip up the contract at some point, yeah, I don't know that we necessarily would ever get back to the point where they wouldn't. But that's a tricky situation, and it's also just part of doing business. Everybody wants the Brewers to spend more money. Well, part of spending money is you have to get locked into bigger contracts. Like they go part and parcel together. That's generally how it works. So especially if you want to get into contracts with good players, you have to give them big long-term contracts. So you're going to run risk when you do that. You're going to, come up behind in some of these things, especially towards the end of the deals. Like that's just part of the calculus in all of this all the time, always. And the Cardinals have just hit a grand slam to go up 18-1.
18?
18.
Only 8 the last time I looked.
Yeah, well, Brasso is in. It's been a bullpen parade, and now like Brasso gave up the grand slam. So yeah.
Well, there goes the run differential.
Oh yeah. Reverse pie
All
fag
right.
game. Yikes.
Yep.
All right. Well, that'll conclude the happy portion of this podcast. That's a nice little segue here. Because we got a trio of questions, I guess we could say, kind of about what's gone wrong in the first quarter of the season. So while Christian Yelich seems to have found his power, same cannot be said for, say, Jesse Winker or Luke Voit. So we got a bunch of questions about that here. So we've got one from Mount Doom 98 replying to Ryan's request for happy questions, saying no such thing as a happy question. Where is Winker's power gone? We got Bob Peterson, glass half full, who goes on a power tear first, Voit or Winker. And then Eric Romblom asking, how long do the Brewers keep giving Voit a look? I just don't see any advantage in keeping him around, regardless of the hero situation. If Winker is healthy, wouldn't it be wise to have a larger share of ABs go his way? I have way more faith in a bounce back from Winker than Voit. So I guess on the heels of your guys' spirited discussion of Luke Voit last week, we did learn that on Monday, Luke Voit went on the injured list. Whether or not you think that's a real injury is a different question. We'll get to his replacement in a second here, but then we also learned that Keston Hiura got hurt. So that's out of the equation. So I guess let's just start from the top here. Paul, what's wrong with Jesse Winker? Is he still hurt?
He looks hurt to me. At this point, it's a matter of if he's, still recovering from injuries or has nagging injuries, or if he's just like a hurt guy who's going to be hurt forever, which is not great if that's the case. But he's only this. I think this is his age 30 season. He's not that old. This is age 29 season, and like you shouldn't go to pot that quickly. But he looks like a guy who is just like way behind on everything, and he looks like when Jesse Winker moves, I hurt. So that's my guess. But if he was older, I'd be like, maybe he's washed. But I feel like he should be able to turn himself back into something. So injury is my best bet.
Yeah, I mean, he had neck surgery in the offseason along with, what was the other one? Like an ankle something, I think. I don't know. It was something in the legs,
I believe it was an ankle. The neck's not great, but...
Yeah, and that is concerning. And you do wonder, like, did he just lose the ability to swing for power and to make hard contact? Certainly the max exit velocity, 28th percentile, hard hit, 33rd percentile, average exit, 39. None of these numbers are good. This is not what you're expecting, not what you're hoping for from Winker. On the positive side from Winker, at least he has basically held on and maintained the other parts of his game. And so you're getting reasonable. Where is his actual splits? There we go. I guess the average has dropped down a little bit. He's down to 225. He was like up in the 250-ish range last time I looked at this, but he must be on a particular cold streak. But the on-base percentage is still at 351. So he's still taking his walks. He's doing that. It's just, good God, the slug's at 263. Yeah. So what he obviously needs to do, like, I think the rest of the game is still there. He's 97th percentile in chase rate, 71st percentile in whiff rate, so he's doing great on those things. I think that the question here is, can he start to impact the ball on a regular basis? And you do have to wonder if that's physical. And I don't know, as not a doctor and not his doctor and not privy to his medicals, we just would be guessing from the outside. But I think you have to give it a considerable while longer here before you would think about like cutting bait on him and getting him off the roster. I think you can start to shade playing time a little bit. And this goes to one of the questions that was in there, was the guy talking about, like, shouldn't we give Winker more playing time? I think Winker having playing time against righties and getting the rest against lefties is actually good, not just on a platoon split basis, but also just getting him rest is good. And not having him out there and keeping him out of the field for the most part has been good. I think I like that. So the question is, and we're getting into this now, so the Brewers got rid of, well, they didn't get rid of Luke Voit. Luke Voit is on the IL.
Sure.
And
tomato.
Yeah, I mean, well, they can still bring him back, so there's still a possibility that we're going to continue to see him at some point. But they have gone out and made another move, and I guess let's just jump into that right now, James.
Yeah. PJ Wessels saying Darren Ruff, lefty masher 2.0. Anyway, is this Luke Voit to the Phantom? Isn't this Darren Ruff's third team this season? It's May 15th in parentheses. Don't we bite apples closer to June and July? So I'll admit I missed the news that he had signed initially. So when like Adam McKelvey's tweeting out videos of Darren Ruff and Brewers stuff in the dugout, I was like, wait, what? So that was definitely confusing. But yeah, Giants cut bait on him. I honestly have no idea who the second team is, and the Brewers are now employing him, but he is in fact a lefty masher. So no reverse platoon splits here, much to my dismay. But for his career, he's 271, 368, 519. That's an 886 OPS against lefties. That's really good. 217, 300, 364 against righties. That is not very good. Nope. And, famously, Darren Ruff was kind of the poster child for the Giants when they went on that ridiculous run a couple of years ago on the swing plane analysis and all that stuff. They seemed to unlock something to finally make Darren Ruff, who was a top prospect way back when and never seemed to put things together, did for one shining 900 OPS season there. So, Ryan, I guess any hope that this kind of cures whatever the Brewers were ailing, at least against lefties?
Well, so Ruff was an interesting one, going back to the prospect thing, because he was a very divisive prospect because he wasn't really a prospect. He was a guy who I don't think he made his debut until he was like 27, 28, right? Like he was relatively old when he did that. And he was a guy who was murdering pitches at AA at like 26. So that was kind of a very...
That's probably why I remember his name popping up all the time back then.
He debuted a cup of coffee at 25, and then he had 293 PAs in his 26th season up in Philadelphia.
Yeah, he was with Philadelphia, and Philadelphia fans, especially, you know, in that era when they were desperate for anything, because that was when the bill had come due on their dynasty and everything was collapsing terribly in 2012, 13, 14, that era. They all wanted him to be the next Babe Ruth.
He's the next Ryan Howard. Yeah.
And that's why everybody called him Babe Ruff. And so there was like and that became a derisive thing from scouts where they were like, no, he's not actually good, guys. But okay, so anyway, getting into what he actually is instead of what he isn't. Yeah, he is actually a lefty masher. And I made the joke on Twitter. I'm like, this is like a monkey's paw situation where it was like, okay, we're going to get the actual lefty masher this time, but he very well might be washed. Like, so I don't know if you're just trying to squeeze anything out of him and hope that you get a few hot weeks of him against left-handed pitching. That's all you're hoping for here. There's not really, it's not deeper than that. It's not, you know, some big grand plan. It's just like they need somebody who can kind of hit for some power against left-handed pitching, and he has a track record even this year. Like he hasn't been that bad against left-handed pitching. I was just looking at that, and it's, you know, it's reasonable compared to the stuff we're trotting out there on this team. A 734 OPS in 21 plate appearances. Like this is getting into ridiculous small sample theater here too. Like, so take this all with a huge grain of salt, but like, this is a very low cost move. It, you know, it's not even costing them like Luke Voigt. He's on the IL, not being DFA'd. So they're giving it a shot. They're seeing what happens, but I wouldn't expect massive transformative things here, but you might as well try something because, you know, the lefty thing has gotten to be super obnoxious at this point.
Right. Just happy they have a guy with real platoon splits, and he's 36. He very well might be washed. He was awful last year. If you want to dream on him a little bit, though, while he has not hit any home runs this year, his peripherals are pretty well in line with his pretty good 2021 season. Like his barrel percentage is almost exactly the same. His launch angle is it's actually a little higher. It's almost exactly the same. His hard hit percentage is almost exactly the same. Balls just haven't been leaving the yard for him. And you know, that happens sometimes. He hasn't played that much, but it's not like there's a big drop off in his peripherals. They're actually kind of goodish. so if he strikes out a lot, striking out a third of his PAs, but if he's worth a try. Like they need somebody. They have nobody with the skill set at all. So yeah, kick the tires. If he sucks, he costs you nothing. And there's at least something in the background there that might be harnessable.
Yeah, and just to the point about last year, yes, he was bad last year, but like not in the way that the Brewers are going to use him. Against lefties, he only hit 222 batting average wise, but 322 on base and a 430 slug. So really, like that's a TOPS plus of 132, an SOPS plus, and I always get those two confused. I can't remember which one's which, but that was 110. So like he's an above average hitter, is solidly above average hitter, even last year, even when the rest of it was crap.
Yeah,
he's still a solidly above average hitter against lefty pitching, and that seems to have carried to this year. So it's not nothing. It's just there's going to be very limited use, and you're not going to want to have him like see any righties when it matters at all ever. So yeah,
and I mean, considering what the Brewers were trotting out there, like you said. Like we're talking super small sample sizes this year, but beats Luke Voigt's super small sample size too, right? So worth trying at least for a couple of weeks, at least until you get some more clarity on, what trade options are going to be there or other guys to get healthy in the minors too. So yeah, why not take a flyer? DFA him in 2 weeks. It doesn't matter. All right. Turning to the pitching, we've got a couple here about Eric Lauer, who has had a rough go of it this year. Obviously, not off to the kind of start that he was off to last year when he was really, really good up until about June or so. Really struggling. May have, momentarily for a blip there, lost a rotation spot, or at least had a spot skipped in the rotation, and then he ended up piggybacking anyway and actually looked really good out of the bullpen. So let's start with Made Wiley's question here, asking over under 5 more starts for Eric Lauer in a Brewers uniform. Has looked awful so far this year, and he doesn't seem to be hurt. So what do we do? That question was obviously sent on Saturday or Sunday before the outing there. And then Tom Haight asking, is Lauer out of the rotation or were they piggybacking on Sunday? My curse that somehow he pitches every game I attend in person, even when he doesn't start. For years, I was on like a Zach Davies run of something like that, where every game I could make it to was a Zach Davies start, and I wanted to throw something. It sucked. So, Tom, my sympathies there. Ryan, obviously, we know what ended up happening, and then Colin Ray was sent back down. So it seems like Eric Lauer back in the rotation, at least for now. But I guess long-term, how do you see them using him? Is he better off in like a piggybacking role like that?
No, I think you start him. It's fine. I don't know how much yesterday he benefited from being able to carve up some young lefty batters that I don't think are necessarily all that good against lefty pitchers. I don't know for sure, but I think that he had some advantage in terms of being able to cut through the Kansas City lineup a little bit that way. And I really don't worry about what we saw in the ninth. He gave up a couple home runs. One of them is to Bobby Witt Jr., who's one of the best young players in baseball. And the other may have been to Adam Eaton. I can't remember exactly who it was, but like at that point in the game, Eric Lauer's job,
fifth inning of work.
Yeah, it was his fifth inning of work, and you're in the ninth, and you have a 5-run lead. The thing you can't do is screw around and are on the edges of the strike zone. You challenge hitters, and if they beat you, you tip your cap, and it's not. If there's nobody on base, the worst result is 1 run. So, and that happened a couple times. And yes, the concern with Lauer is the home runs. But honestly, like I said this during the week, that my bigger concern, everybody's focused on the home runs, but that's always been a part of Eric Lauer's profile. He can be successful giving up a well above average home run rate. The scary part with Lauer is this year his whip was, I don't have it. Why does Fangraphs not have the whip?
1.437.
1.437.
Not great.
Hold on. It was coming into yesterday. It was over 1.5. And that was a full third of a runner per inning. He was like 121 last year. Was that about right? It was like somewhere in that neighborhood.
Sorry, I had the teams up, so not Eric Lauer's own page.
Oh.
But I will tell you anyway. Last year his whip was 1.223.
Okay, 1.22. So there's been a huge jump in the number of base runners he's allowed this year. That's been the problem more so than the home runs, because like I said, he gives up home runs. That's part of the profile. And he's a fly ball pitcher who has like home run issues. So is Corbin Burns. Like it's the part of some pitchers' profiles just work like that. The problem is that he's had too many runners on, and so those home runs, instead of being solo shots or 2-run shots, he's been giving up 3-run shots, and that's been more of a problem for him. So I did like what I saw from him yesterday against the Royals, but I don't know how much to read into it. I would definitely say
it's the Royals.
First off, yep. It's he's going back into the rotation because Colin Ray got optioned down today. So yep. Colin Ray's out. It is going to be Lauer's is going to make the next start. Like there's no question about that. So we can put that one to bed. But
nobody should complain about that either. Colin Ray got figured out and was
Bad.
awful. Yeah.
Yeah, Colin Ray, not good. Like Eric Lauer, there's a chance that you could still find like a way for him to be a really reliable, solid back of the rotation starter. Colin Ray wasn't going to be that. So
Nope.
Colin Ray is much more Jason Alexander in him, where it was just like you didn't want him in there as much as as much as possible. Like you want to avoid that. So yes. But Eric Lauer is kind of a divisive figure, and I think it does get lost how good he has been in the, especially the 2022 or 2021, 2022 seasons. Like, he really had a very, very good run there. I don't know how much long-term you want to invest in him. He definitely wouldn't be a guy I would extend, but I think there's a lot of use there, and I think expectations sometimes run away with people on that, because people were talking about that him being worse than Ray, which is just straight up like watch the pitch. Like, that's not really true. Like, Colin Ray is a much more limited pitcher than what Eric Lauer is.
Yeah, even with the velo concerns and such with Lauer so far this year, like you could just see he at least has offerings that miss bats. Colin Ray did not. So I guess thanks for the 5 starts, Colin, and see ya in Nashville. Woodridge Joe has our next question about the pitching staff, asking, again, sent before Monday night, at what point do we fear regression for Freddie Peralta, or does the gang think this is something that he keeps up over the remainder of the season? So obviously, Nolan Arenado tagged him for a 3-run homer in the first inning on Monday night. So maybe regression coming back a little bit, but Paul, we kind of talked earlier. He's been really good, but just hasn't had like the bulk innings, right?
Yeah, Freddie's Freddie, and he is a good pitcher that will be good most of the time, who misses bats, but has the occasional struggle with control and the occasional blow up, and that's just how he is. But generally speaking, I think regression for Freddie is he's good. His problem is availability. It's not talent or missing bats or anything like that. So you just have to live with the occasional weird starts from him, and by and large, he'll come back to be reliable more often than not. And that's what I expect from him going forward.
100%. He had a start tonight where also I think the reliever, whoever followed him, ended up giving up a couple of his runs. Oh, yeah, that was in that horrible inning where the Cardinals were hitting balls on the ground, and they were hitting umpires. So they hit the umpire at second base. They hit just right up the middle at a point where neither Willie nor Terang could make a play on the ball and then get to the bag. So that was just like a pure devil magic sort of inning. And and then the relievers come in. It was a day where everything went wrong. So I wouldn't read too much into it. But yeah, he's still pretty good. And Paul's 100% right. Availability is the big concern with Peralta. Not really the other stuff. I would not worry about that nearly so much.
Jay Google blames this game on you, by the way, just so you know.
Naturally.
Mm-hmm.
It's always Ryan's fault. All right. I guess speaking of the Cardinals, again, a couple of questions that were sent before the Cardinals put up damn near 20 runs on the Brewers. But Lucroy's Suitcase asking, how much losing do we have to see before the, quote, Cardinal way disappears? On another note, I'm kind of worried that they hex the rest of the division are going to mount a comeback from 7 games out. And then Steve DeRozier also asking, the Cardinals are beginning to show some life. Am I the only one who has a dreadful feeling that they are about to go on one of their winning streaks, trade for a pitcher or two, and wave at the rest of the division as they sprint past them in the standings? So obviously not going to let one night ruin our perceptions of the Cardinals, who have been bad to start the year, and everything seems to have gone wrong. But never assume the horror movie villain is dead, right, Paul?
Perspective still has them at 52% to make the playoffs, which is obnoxious.
That's insane. This stupid division.
Yeah, the division's bad. That's part of the problem. But like, I'm just, I know they're them, but they've been doing this with Goldschmidt and Nolan Gorman playing pretty well. They got here with that happening. So it's not like Arenado can turn it around. if they turn
He
around,
has.
that's what will save them. But like everybody else on that offense is playing at a reasonable rate, and that pitching staff is not good. It's just not, and it's fragile. So it's every bit. There's a good chance that they actually crap out more, as much as there is that they turn it around. Like their pitching has actually kind of been a little better than it probably should be, at least what it should be. And if they suffer any injuries, they are very vulnerable. So I'm not scared of them yet. If Nolan Arenado goes on a tear, I will start to become scared of them, and that could happen for sure. But right now, they are kind of what they are. Like this is not that weird. So not scared, despite losing by 20 or whatever we just lost by.
So Arenado has hit home runs in 4 straight games. So it seems like, and it like he is now just crushing baseballs and doing Nolan Arenado things again. And I don't know what was wrong with him early on, but that seems to have turned around. But you're absolutely right about the fact that like they were actually doing this, getting some good performances out of some guys. And they've also done this, and I think this is the biggest thing that's getting missed. They have been really healthy so far, other than basically Wainwright missing the first month. And I don't know how impactful he's actually going to be. I honestly don't know. But if you look up and down their lineup or their roster here, like Jake Woodford is on the 15-day IL, but Jake Woodford sucked anyway. So like, who cares? And really everybody else is healthy. Oh, I guess Tyler O'Neill's on the 10-day. Okay. So Tyler O'Neill's missed a little bit of time. The Cardinals have done this, have gotten off to this wretched start with really good health. And we've talked about this before. Their best players are all on the wrong side of 30. Their 2 best starters, their 2 best hitters. These guys are all on the wrong side of 30. And so at some point, we just sort of like, I guess, take for granted that at some point the Brewers guys are going to get hurt. They're going to go on the IL and we're going to be miserable about it and whatever. But like at some point, some of these Cardinals guys are not going to be healthy and they are going to miss some significant time. The Cardinals' devil magic, I don't think extends that far. So I think that's the biggest, if you want to hold out hope here, like the Cardinals haven't seen like adversity from a roster standpoint really at all yet. They've seen adversity in terms of what their performance on the field was, but they had their horses. This was mostly the team that they had designed to send out there to start the year that's been out there. So I think if you want to feel good about the fact that the Cardinals aren't necessarily going to be great here going forward, I think that's what you have to hold on to. But there is also just the thing of never assume that the horror movie villain is dead, because it's just the Cardinals and they have the devil magic, and screw them.
Yeah, I mean, the only real roster adversity they've faced is self-inflicted in, doing whatever they're doing with Wilson Contreras and then starting Andrew Kinzer willingly, like that's all they're doing. And I guess on that note, PJ Wessels has a question about that situation, saying Wilson Contreras was a catcher, then wasn't a catcher, and is now a catcher again. What sort of move or moves would the Brewers have to do to match this stupidity? And just context being, they moved their superstar catcher off of catcher 1 month into a 5-year contract, where they paid him oodles of money. So I guess, Paul, what would this be for the Brewers?
So I don't think the Brewers have anything super on point. Maybe like moving Freddie Peralta with the current roster construction to the bullpen and just wasting him there. But like it's just stupid because they've had this shouldn't have been a surprise. Like Wilson Contreras is very well written and studied by everyone. He's not a great catcher. He can be okay, but that's kind of his ceiling. And you're not getting Yachty. And if you don't plan for not having Yachty, that's on you. That's not on Wilson. And
it's not his fault.
Wilson Contreras is there to sit behind the plate, hit dingers, and get hit and complain about it. Like that's what he does. And if you don't lean into that, that's your fault. It is on them for doing that. There was a bunch of good prospectus articles on the subject taking the Cardinals to task for it. And also, I think really laying out that Yachty was likely responsible for a lot of game calling, and that they did not have a good documented process or staff set up to replace him when he left, and tried to blame it on their new catcher for not being Yachty, but can't do that.
They never learned how to call their own games. They don't know how to pitch.
They're not playing the game the right way. So there's not a good, not a great Brewer analogy to it. Just because partially the Brewers are good defenders in a lot of ways, and so there's not a good moving Joey Wiemer to left field's not that. That's the opposite. So I think it is moving Peralta to the bullpen is the equivalent, but Cardinals are stupid there. They're being uncharacteristically dumb in how they handled that situation.
Yeah, I don't have a better comp than that. It was really stupid, and there was also just the way that it unfolded last weekend, where you saw first they're like, he's moving to the outfield. And then they're like, wait, no, we didn't say that. And then they get all defensive about it, and they get really, stupid about it. And they just have had a bunch of PR moves. Will Leach was on Effectively Wild this last week. And he talked about the fact that Mozeliak sort of has gotten to that how dare you question me sort of phase of whatever, where the press comes in with questions and he gets really upset, and that seems to have trickled down. The Jack Flaherty thing, and I think Jack is actually probably materially right about what he was saying, where everybody is so focused now on watching the pitch velocities. And I think this has happened with Lauer, where it's no, there's a lot more to it. And there's a lot more nuance to it than just oh my God, he's down 1.6 miles per hour on his fastball in this start. This is a disaster. And that's way oversimplified analysis. And there is a lot more complexity that goes into it. Guys are blending pitches, guys are doing different things. And there's just natural variance on that stuff in a way that people need to just chill and not pay such close attention to that. But still, just the way that he went after the medium was I guess you just don't understand pitching and whatever. And I think it was Katie Wu said something well, you have to, or somebody said well, okay, that's why we're asking the question. You explain it to us then so that we will understand. and that didn't go over well. So there is a lot of discontent and whatever, and all that comes from just the thing with the Cardinals where everybody is expecting them not to be bad because bad seasons are unacceptable for the Cardinals. And so this idea that going back a little bit here, the idea of how long before the Cardinals way disappears, part of the reason the Cardinal way exists is because there's such tremendous pressure on whoever is in charge of the organization to make sure that they are good. They are under a tremendous amount of pressure to do this. And I think there's some comparables. I'm not the first person to comp the Packers and the Cardinals to each other. Yeah. And
no, you're not.
There's some truth to this idea that when that expectation exists and there's such pressure, and there's also resources, and there's a tradition behind it, so there's sort of momentum behind it to make it work, that can actually really do a lot of things. And also in both of those cases, the Cardinals have had the advantage of playing in the NL Central, and the Packers have had the advantage of playing in the NFC North and Central before that. So they have also had some competitive advantages that way. But some of this is just when there's an expectation based on history, based on what the organization model sort of has been, a lot of times there's just a lot of pressure just to rise to meet that. And when there's not, it doesn't necessarily happen. It's one of the hardest things to do in sports is to create that. The Patriots were not a winning organization pre-Belichick and Tom Brady. They had moments like the Bill Parcells thing with Drew Bledsoe, but they weren't long-term that thing. But you sort of create it, and once you create those senses of expectation, that can carry you a ways, unless it curdles and turns into the Nebraska football thing, which is no level of success is ever good enough because you're not winning 3 national titles in 4 years. So it can curdle. It can become a problem at some point when it gets over the top. But I think it's reasonable in the Cardinals case. They can just sort of continue to do this based on, sort of the landscape that they inhabit.
All right. Still plenty of questions to get to, so let's move along here. Next one comes from you're either a smart fella or a fart smella asking, is it possible that fate is simply commanding that Keston Hiura get another shot with the Brewers? It would seem that Winker plus Voigt's struggles might be leaving open the door. Also, am I reading too far into Hiura having gotten rid of his reverse platoon splits against Triple-A pitching, of course, as a good sign? Again, this clearly said before we got news that Keston's hurt and is going to miss a significant amount of time. Not 3 or 4 months, which when things are phrased that way, that's never a great sign.
No.
Yeah.
I believe Adam McKelvey kind of clarified we're probably looking at like late June, so at least a month plus here before we even start thinking about Keston Hiura getting back. So it did seem like fate was kind of working in his way, Paul, but came back and kind of took that shot away from him again if it was going to happen.
Fate brought the hammer, and he probably was trending to get a shot, honestly. They clearly weren't happy with Luke Voigt to the extent that they, we'll just say he got hurt. But it's off the table now. And maybe there was progress made, and maybe there was actually something there, but we're not going to find out now. So is what it is. Darren Ruff's here, and it's unfortunate, and we didn't get to see it. I root for Keston, but he's always been a little injury prone, and he got him again for the millionth time.
And just to be clear about the reverse platoon splits, he was hitting everything in AAA.
He was. Yeah,
like you can quibble about the numbers, which whatever. He was still putting up a better on base percentage, and I think like fundamentally was still a better hitter against right-handers, even though his OPS was 5 points lower against righties. He was 1.077 versus 1.072. Like, yeah, Ooh. Okay. He was really hitting, and we covered this a lot already, and it's kind of a moot point at this point. We have a lot to cover, so like I'm not going to go deep into it, but yeah, like it sucks more than anything for him. He has had such a rough run between everything. Like his career has just been a mess, down to the personal life stuff with his mom and the cancer diagnosis that she had. She seems to be doing well. It has not been a good 5 years, or 4 years since Keston Hiura had that breakout. We thought everything was going to be great. 2019, and it's just been really, really unpredictably awful since. So it sucks for him more than anything, and we'll have to see where we stand when he comes back, and if he's still hitting, we can reevaluate at that point. But for right now, we can just say it sucks.
On the topic of Keston Hiura, we have a question from Nick Vollendorf asking, for his JS Online article about Keston Hiura, Kurt Hogue talked to Hiura's longtime personal hitting coach. How pervasive are personal hitting coaches? Isn't there a risk that players get conflicting advice from the team's hitting coaches and their personal coaches? And couldn't this contribute to Hiura's and other players' poor performance when he has been up with the Brewers? So I guess, it's not super unusual to have, these personal coaches every now and then. I know in the NFL, there's like personal quarterback coaches, which with Russell Wilson is a huge issue, Paul. But I guess, too many voices maybe conflict, but I guess I don't know how the Brewers operate on that level.
Yeah, I don't know how pervasive it is, which I should, because I am a personal hitting coach now. But
what's your rate?
It's plenty. But I do feel like there is some level of organizational control that the team will make a stink if things aren't being taught in a few ways they find important. But I honestly don't know how that relationship really does work. I suspect it's more of we'll tolerate it as long as it's either not hurting or actually helping. But I could see approach fights breaking out pretty easily in that scenario. So, I have Kurt did it. I have not dug into this question particularly much, but there's only so much disagreeing with the organization that would be tolerated by the organization before they would, I think, have words about it.
Read the MVP machine. They go into this in extensive detail about like how this has become much more common in the game over the last, basically since Justin Turner did it around like 2013-14 with the Dodgers. Like this has become much more common in the game. Teams are accepting it more than they used to. They're obviously, Paul's right. Like there still have to be problems. There still has to be conflict that comes up from this stuff. But there also probably is still conflict within the Brewers. They have multiple hitting coaches in their organization. You know, they have multiple hitting coaches at the major league level. So they're not always going to agree and see eye to eye with each other. Sometimes conflict can be constructive. As long as it's not like, you know, screwing guys up. Sometimes guys are going to respond more to one thing and sometimes guys will respond more to another. It's more a question of just like having an idea of what advice is being done and that you're not putting the player in like a bad position. Like I think that's the biggest thing is like, don't screw up the player and don't get him like getting his signals crossed. But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a problem. I think it could become one, but it could also just be a benefit. So sometimes, I don't know. When this personal hitting coach that Keston Hiura has had for a long time has seen him go from being a contact first hitter in college, right, to being a power hitter in the major leagues or in the high minors and then in the major leagues. So he's already like overseen sort of like a transformation of what Hiura is. And so I don't know how much of that necessarily, there's always been that question because Keith Law has always said like the Brewers screwed up Keston Hiura's swing. Well, was it the Brewers or was it his personal hitting coach? That's very hard to parse. So whatever, it's there's other things to worry about. There's more things to worry about.
All right. Moving on, let's shift gears instead of individual players here, just kind of big picture thing. M. Santana asking, looking ahead a little bit, what do you think will be the Brewers or Matt Arnold's strategy at the trade deadline this year? Anything y'all'd like to see? I personally would like to see anybody who could hit for any power because I caught the Brewers ticker on Monday night say that the Brewers are 27th in extra base hits. That's very bad. I would like them to fix that. Paul, how about you?
I assume that they will trade for relief pitchers, and they will give up prospects that I'm not familiar with for those relief pitchers. That's my bet. I'm sticking with it until it's wrong, and I doubt it'll be wrong anytime soon. But you're right. Their offense is still down, and but maybe they get a little healthier. Maybe they turn things around. But maybe Darren Ruff goes off and is awesome. But they could use another bat for sure as well.
Yeah, they'll trade for relief pitchers because they always trade for relief pitchers. They've literally done that every year since 2017. So that is coming. Hopefully it works better. It's more like the Drew Pomerantz, Anthony Swarzak era of things rather than the last few years. But we will have to see about that. Yeah, it's a bat. It's definitely like you'd like to get a really good bat, and that's difficult to do. So those are the hardest guys to get. You would hope that Christian Yelich could maybe be that guy, but we already covered the ground. So whatever. That's a tricky situation.
Steve DeRozier asking sort of a follow-up question here. The Brewers will likely need to make an move or moves to win the division. Who are some of the realistic trade chips who have value that Matt Arnold would be willing to move? And then sort of like what we talked about, what's the higher priority to improve the team, a bat or pitching? So Ryan, I guess in terms of trade chips, I'd say at the start of the year, they had an influx of outfielders, but I don't know if that's the case or what they would trade from now. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult. The Garrett Mitchell thing definitely dried up that surplus somewhat. Sal Frelick coming up could help replenish it, and maybe they look at things, but there's not any guy that I like from that group want to trade. I don't want to trade Sal Frelick. I don't want to trade Joey Weaver.
Of course you don't.
I don't want to trade. Yeah, really, like the guy I would have been okay trading was Garrett Mitchell. Like that was the guy and that's just not a thing right now. So. Yeah, I think that you can. you could probably do lower level prospects. I would be surprised if we saw anybody from the top 10 get moved, unless it's hard to see them moving somebody from the top 10 prospects unless the situation was really favorable to them, and I just don't know what that would even look like. It's just not something that they've really done. They haven't really dealt from their good prospects, ever, other since the Christian Yelich trade. Like that was the last time they really dipped into the high end of their prospect pool to go get anybody. And that's, 6 years ago now? It's been quite a while.
Yeah, and even then, a lot of those were prospects that were from a different organization, like the Brinson and everybody, they weren't their own guys, so they were more willing to trade them. And
you got to think that they had negative evals on them because none of those guys have turned out. So you have to think that they maybe, if not completely foresaw that, had inklings that there were some things here that were going to make Lewis Brinson and Monty Harrison, particularly because those were the high-end guys in that trade, that was going to make them no-goes, and they weren't going to be good major leaguers. They had an inkling of that, obviously. So, yeah.
Next question, Andrew S. asking, is it time to fully be on the Tyler Black hype train? I have liked Tyler Black a while, but momentum seems to be growing here, Ryan, and he's healthy, at least for now.
Yeah, that's been the biggest thing with Tyler Black is he hasn't been healthy. We did talk about him extensively on the last Minor League Extra, so if you're not a patron and want to get in on that sort of thing, I would highly recommend doing so. I comped him this week, and it's a very irresponsible comp. Like, did you see this? Do you know?
This is my favorite type. No, I love irresponsible comps. They're my favorite.
I called him a poor man's Joey Votto. For lots for lots of reasons.
Poor?
Well, that was the thing. And I said, whether we're talking like pauper Joey Votto here, or whether we're talking, like lower middle class Joey Votto, I don't know. But like the line on him right now, guys, in 2023, he's hitting 255, 445.
Yeah.
And he has 6 home runs. And there's everything going for this, down to the fact that, one, he's walking a lot more than he's striking out, which is insane in today's game. Like, it's not just there's a small difference between his walks and his strikeouts. He, let me see. I have the numbers here. He has struck out 24 times and he's walked 28 times. Like, he is walking, substantially more than he's striking out. Which is why you get that insane walk rate. And if you remember, Joey Votto has always been kind of a guy, like, he'll end up with a solid number of career home runs. But remember when Reds fans hated Joey Votto's guts for like 5-6 years there?
Absolutely.
The reason they hated Joey Votto's guts was he wasn't hitting for enough power, because Joey Votto was always kind of more of like a 25 home run, 40 doubles type guy. And that just doesn't fit people's preconceived notions of what like a superstar first baseman is supposed to be.
Didn't have RBIs either. Would take a walk with runners in scoring position. XYZ.
Exactly. So, like, Tyler Black sort of fits that mold really, really well, and they're both Canadian. So, like, from that perspective, I'm just like, all right. So we have the Canadian angle. We have all of this, and just like the profile sort of what they are from that perspective. One thing I will say, and this is, have you looked at the stolen base numbers? Because that ain't Joey Votto. This is like Joey Votto running. Look at that. When you see it, look at that number.
All right.
It's not just the top line stolen bases. It's how many times in comparison he's been caught. You find it yet? Do. It's 19-1. He has 19 stolen bases and 1 caught stealing.
That'll play.
Yeah. That's kind of exceptional. And when a guy's getting on base as much as he is, like, he's got a cool 445 on base percentage. I think that the biggest thing here, and this came up on Twitter a little bit this weekend, Kyle Wisniewski actually asked about this and was like, well, does he profile at third? I don't think I mean, you can probably play him at third. You can probably play him at second. I don't think you want to do that, especially the Brewers with this current incarnation of what they're doing, which is we really want to be very good defensively. I don't think you want to have him get many plate appearances there. But if he's hitting like this, it doesn't matter where you can play this. This profile plays anywhere. You can play this at first base. You can play this in left field. You can play this at DH. It doesn't matter. Like this is a good hitter no matter what. So I think, yeah, it is time. I know James Anderson just blew him up on his prospect list, on his dynasty list. And people are starting to take, very, very close notice of what Tyler Black is doing. So I think it is fair to get excited about Tyler Black.
There we go. Next question, Jay Google asking, are we starting to see the effects of the pitch clock on pitchers in terms of effectiveness and injuries? Not just the Brewers, a lot of people hurt right now. Like literally half the rosters, or Rays roster, I should say, seems like they've had Tommy John. So I guess, Paul, is it too early to say if the pitch clock and hurrying is kind of hurting guys more? What do you think?
Nope, not too early. One of those things that Prospectus is basically checked out, and a little bit on the small sample size, but who wrote this? Daniel Epstein today in Prospectus. So far in the 2023 season, there have been 76 elbow and 62 shoulder injuries. The average, excluding the COVID season for the past 3 seasons, is 60 elbow injuries and about 42 shoulder injuries. So there have been 20 more shoulder than average and about 16 more elbow than average, which is significant. And there are other reasons that could be the case that point out in the article that as velocities increase and spin rate increases, it adds more torque on the arm, and that injuries have been creeping up slowly over time, but nothing like this level of a jump in a given season. So it is the other thing that they said is the World Baseball Classic does usually come with a small uptick as well, but nothing like this. That's been detailed over a couple of classics here and by Ben Lindbergh as well. So yeah, it looks like the pitch clock is having an adverse effect on pitchers, and it's not a good thing. And it'll be interesting to see if there's some pushback at the end of the season if this does not slow down.
Yeah, I think that it's a combination of things, as you cited already, that this isn't just one thing, but the pitch clock does seem to be a thing here. I think that it's important to note that that isn't necessarily a deal breaker. And that's sounds harsh, but part of the deal in this whole calculation was they were hoping to get pitchers to start throwing less hard. They were hoping that this, along with maybe some other things that they could do, would start to get pitchers to back off of being max velo all the time, right? This has been a thing that they've talked about a lot on Effectively Wild, where pitchers are just now really at the top end of their velocity much, much more often than they used to be, and they're not adding and subtracting and sort of managing themselves through games the way that pitchers in the past would have. And I think that if this ends up resulting in pitchers saying, okay, if we want to stay healthy, we are going to have to figure out ways to manage this and back off and not be all velo all the time and just trying to go at the max effort every single time out there. I think that this can have a long-term good effect on the game. The question is sort of how much damage has to be done in the adjustment process there. I'm struggling. There's a comp here. There's a phrase for this. Like how much collateral damage are you willing to accept in a sort of readjustment and a realignment of how you do things? And I don't have anything like a good answer to that question. I don't know what it is. I'm just saying that there is some potential benefit to the game to getting pitchers to backing off and to not being as towards the top end of their velocity range as often as they have been. And But this is an extremely tricky call, and I don't know. We more than anything, we have to wait and collect more data, right? Like we have to wait and find out what is truly going on, and I don't know that even 1 year's worth of data is going to be sufficient for that, because there's other, like Paul pointed out, ran through all the confounding variables. So, but it definitely is something that has to be monitored, and there are definitely people who are watching it very closely, and probably some people who are watching it very closely and freaking out, I would imagine.
For sure. All right. We'll make this the last question this week, because when we started, I told these guys, hopefully we're done in less than 90 minutes, and we're getting perilously close to that. So Morgoth 10, I think my favorite question of the week, asking if each of the Brewers in today's starting lineup were types of soup or soup-like meals, what would they be? For example, I feel like Yelich is a chili soup, since he's great on day 1, but by day 4, you've run out of toppings to go with it. The soup is still pretty good, but you just don't really want to eat it anymore. So this is fun. I don't know if I would have one for everybody. So I guess he took care of Yelich. So Paul, if Jesse Winker were a soup, what would he be?
So I have to back up a second. I apologize.
Uh-oh.
But
oh no, are we gonna do what's a soup?
No, chili is.
Okay.
I'm fine with chili being soup. It's always offered with soups at restaurants. But chili is better left over, and so this is a mischaracterization of chili as something that is worse. It's better on day 4. It's much better on day 4. So,
but do you want to eat it 4 days in a row? That's the thing. I don't know.
No, but you can not eat it 2 and 3. Like you don't eat the same meal every day. You can make it on Monday, and then you can have it again on Thursday, and it'll be better. And you can be very confident in that fact. So I just disagree. That's how chili ages. That's not correct. Chili ages very well, and in doing so is very much not Christian Yelich.
Okay. So what would Christian Yelich be as a soup, Paul?
So something that doesn't age very well, like seafood chowder of some kind, I guess, which is great. Like that's what you're going for here. That's good when you get it, but doesn't really, because it gets gamey and fishy and bad. So that's that. And I would say this particular instance is probably Manhattan clam chowder, which is unsavable. Although maybe it turns it around and gets back to normal, but more like that. I think that's what you're looking for there. Like Willie Adames, I'd say like beer cheese. It's solid. It always comes to play. It will never disappoint you, and it has a very high floor. That's that guy in a nutshell. Jesse Winker is that's a toughie. Gazpacho, I guess. Like there's one annoying person likes it and brings too much of it, and then nobody else eats it. That's I guess what I go for him. It's hard to come up with a soup for everybody though. But
yeah. I don't want to steal the idea, because chili is actually different than Texas chili. Those people who listen to the original Up and In podcast with Kevin Goldstein and Jason Parks will know all of this, because Parks was a fanatic on the subject because he's from Texas. So their chili is the only chili, but like Rowdy Tellez seems like a kick-ass Texas chili, even though he's from California. Technically,
I'm down with that. I think we can make distinguishing chilies too. That's fine.
Yeah, like he is that specific sort of chili in there. James, you had a whole list when I originally brought this up to you.
I'm trying to find it because we were joking around earlier this week.
Didn't you have Owen Miller as the beer cheese soup?
Owen Miller is beer cheese because he's from Wisconsin, so of course it has to be beer cheese, but that's less fun. I said Jesse Winker's a bland tomato soup. Always seems like a better idea than it ends up being.
Yeah,
so
kind of like that too. So
yeah, exactly. And I said Luke Voigt's not in the lineup, but he's clam chowder because he blows chunks. So yeah.
I'm gonna go with split pea for William Contreras with those big hunks of ham in there. That's
okay. I wondered where that was going for a second. I thought that was.
I feel like that's a good catcher soup, and
he's
I feel like he's earned it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like what would Brian Anderson be like? A
soup that gets hurt all the time. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly what that was. Yeah, that I don't know. Like, who is actually
Brian Anderson is he's just like a Campbell's like star noodle, whatever that crap is that you give kids. That's what he is.
I was gonna say, Peter Strzelecki can be like alphabet soup.
I'm not doing
You know,
pitchers.
yeah.
I'm not getting
No,
into that.
No, okay, here's one for you. I'll do Colin Ray is
Oh, jeez.
Colin Ray is the lobster bisque because he's not worth mentioning.
Wow. We're so mean to Colin Ray this week. I'm sorry, Colin.
It really, well, but
You
he's
know,
not good.
I'm sorry to be pedantic twice on this little segment here, but the lobster bisque was worth mentioning.
Oh, that's right.
That's the joke.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. I mentioned the bisque. Yeah, so the
Yes.
lobster bisque was worth mentioning, as opposed to the experience of the player. Actually, you know what? That still works for Colin Ray. So whatever.
All right. Any others? I can't think of anything else right now.
No,
We've been doing this for an hour and a half.
Yeah, let's get to bed.
Okay. There are a couple others, but James Vandenberg, you said we can skip your question, so we absolutely will. Sorry. We'll do it next week.
It was a record number of questions this week, guys. Thank you for all of them. And we didn't even have like a rundown other than the questions. So
Yep.
Yeah, this was an all question episode.
You guys tackled everything we wanted to talk about anyway, so that's when it works out nicely.
Mm-hmm.
A reminder that you can get question priority. Make sure your question gets answered, unless you're James Vandenberg and say, don't answer my question. Patreon.com/MKE Tailgate, $2 a month gets you that question priority access there. We also want to give a shout out to a couple new patrons, Ryan, this week. Who do we have?
We do. I need to keep scrolling here. Oh, yeah. So Nick Vollendorf and Joe Woodruff. Welcome to both of you. Thank you very much for
welcome aboard.
For signing up there. We do appreciate it very, very much.
Yeah, looking forward to those questions too. Even if you're not a patron, you can go and support us another way. As always, you can go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you listen to us. Give us a 5-star review while you're there. Be sure to hit that subscribe button or follow button. Make sure you never miss an episode. Get those push alerts every time Ryan sends out those episodes there. This is a marathon one. I guess it's good. A lot of interest in the Brewers. Things are going pretty solid, outside of losing 18-1. That's never fun, but hopefully they bounce back. Got the rest of the trip in St. Louis and then Tampa Bay. So challenging week ahead for the Brewers, but good test to kind of see where they stand. So we will be back here next week to recap all of that, take all of your questions. Thank you again, everybody, for listening. We will see you here next week on Milwaukee's Tailgate.
Fair weather fan, it's not what I am, even though the zip code has changed. I might smile and enjoy where I'm currently employed. You're so